urgently this has crushed Russia, Germany has loaded a weapon that will extinguish Moscow. The air defense is on standby. Final strikes are coming. The West has gone all in. Mega weapons from the Czech Republic, like a bolt from the blue. Everything has already been decided. There will be a big explosion. Kazakhstan has torn Russia apart. The turning point has come right now. The Kremlin's army is blocked. The hell of the front is devouring the enemy. Explosive footage has spread across the internet. Putin was pressured in front of everyone. All this in our episode Hell Point. Shock. While the enemy boasts about their missiles, Berlin is quietly preparing a welcome for them. New air defense systems are bursting onto the scene and shielding the country. Germany has finally decided to take a decisive step, supplying weapons that could turn the situation around. This has really rattled Putin. The Kremlin is losing its confidence and falling into panic. Just one more step and Moscow will be on the edge of the abyss. Could this happen tomorrow? All the answers to your questions are in the following report.
Ukraine will receive 2 more Patriot systems from Germany by the end of 2025. Berlin will provide these modern air defense systems to Kyiv with the support of Norwegian partners. The strengthening of Ukraine's air defense and the supply of missiles for them were additionally discussed by Volodymyr Zelensky and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz during a meeting on the sidelines of the European Political Community Summit in Copenhagen. They also discussed the implementation of the initiative, a list of Ukraine's priority requirements, which allows the purchase of American weapons with financial support from alliance member countries. In particular, Germany has already financed the 3rd package. As for
Germany is one of the leaders when it comes to providing Ukraine with air defense systems. Specifically, these are Patriot missile systems plus PAC-2 and PAC-3 missiles for the Patriots, as well as IRIS-T systems. It should also be noted that in addition to this, Gepards are also being supplied. Again, these are short-range air defense systems. It should be noted that the German side is building a layered air defense system.
Germany is the largest European donor of military aid to Ukraine, supporting the Ukrainian people so they can defend their freedom today and deter aggression in the future.
In addition to sophisticated air defense systems, Germany has also supplied Ukraine with various armored vehicles, including the highly capable Leopard 2 and the advanced Leopard 2 A6 tanks, which are widely considered among the most modern and effective types of armored vehicles available in their respective class. Furthermore, there has been the significant delivery of numerous infantry fighting vehicles, providing crucial support. In addition, Germany, in close cooperation with its partners, is currently actively financing the crucial transfer to the Ukrainian side of certain essential resources and vital supplies. This refers to self-propelled artillery units. The German company Rheinmetall is one of the largest artillery shell manufacturers in the world. It is Germany that has indeed taken on the primary and most significant responsibility for supplying a substantial quantity of 155mm caliber artillery shells.
In September, Berlin launched a new initiative to purchase long-range drones jointly with Ukraine's defense industry for 300 million euros.
It is Germany that proposed the first innovative formula for supporting the Ukrainian defense industry and financing long-range weapons programs. First and foremost, this concerns Ukrainian ballistic missiles and the production of strike drones. The allocated amount is about $1.9 billion. This amount is sufficient accordingly to scale up the production of strike drones within the Ukrainian ballistic program, more specifically known as Flamin.
Germany has also moved to the next stage of providing military assistance to Ukraine, which involves Berlin purchasing weapons for Kyiv from Ukrainian manufacturers as well as joint production.
Germany understands perfectly well that the plans of the Russian Federation may involve expanding the theater of military operations on the European continent, and the first to face the threat of Russian aggression will be Germany itself. This is the Kaliningrad region, this is the former Prussia, which accordingly is temporarily part of the Russian Federation.
Since the beginning of the war, the German government has provided Ukraine with assistance totaling over 50 billion euros.
In 2022, Germany spent 1.6 billion euros on aid to Ukraine, while in 2023 this amount was about 5 billion euros, and accordingly in 2024 this amount has already reached about 7.5 billion euros. For the year 2025, the total amount of military technical assistance to Ukraine is currently planned to be around 9 billion euros. This significant financial support aims to bolster their defense capabilities. Moreover, there is also a completely separate budget line specifically allocated for funding the production of the Ukrainian ballistic missile program and the development of Ukrainian long-range strike drones.
Germany plays an important role in NATO's collective defense, leads the alliance's forward land forces, conducts air patrols over the Baltic Sea, and also ensures maritime security by protecting critical infrastructure and strategic transport routes.
The Czech Republic is taking support for Ukraine to a new level. Supply and production are running at full capacity, and ammunition from the ally is already heading to the front lines. The enemy is on the edge, and the allies are acting in a coordinated manner. These strikes from the West have dealt a painful blow to the dictator. Putin is holding on with his last strength. Our forces are pressing. How this became possible? More details in the following material.
Ukraine and the Czech Republic are creating their own Ramstein. The goal of our country is to deepen this cooperation by signing an intergovernmental agreement and a support program for affected enterprises. The industrial Ramstein was noted by Ukraine's Minister of Economy, Environment and Agriculture, Oleksiy Sobolyev.
Not only the Czech defense industry, but also the country's political leadership at this moment, as part of the so-called Czech initiatives, is a key element in providing material and technical support to Ukraine's defense forces.
The Embassy of the Czech Republic in Kyiv reports that the Czech Republic supports Ukraine's democratic transformation and Euro-Atlantic integration, both in the political sphere and through concrete projects and initiatives. For the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, Ukraine is a priority country for transformational cooperation, a country of special focus within Czech development cooperation, and a beneficiary of humanitarian aid.
At present, under the Czech-Slovak initiative, around 2 million artillery shells have already been delivered. This has significantly strengthened the capabilities of Ukraine's defense forces, particularly in counter-battery warfare, and accordingly has increased their effectiveness against Russian armored vehicles. The Czech Republic, a steadfast ally, has generously provided Ukraine's valiant armed forces with a substantial arsenal, including approximately 70 T-72 M1 main battle tanks, more than 140 combat vehicles of various types, numerous multiple rocket launch systems, and correspondingly, an immense quantity of about 4.5 million rounds of ammunition. This comprehensive package of military aid specifically includes essential shells for artillery pieces, specialized initiative shells, and a wide array of firearms, all crucial for their ongoing defense efforts.
During the war in Ukraine, 220 Czech companies remain in the country. Also, as part of the cooperation, Ukraine plans to provide the Czech Republic with a list of the necessary industrial equipment needed by enterprises that have suffered as a result of military actions.
That is, these are the enterprises that remained on the territory of the Czech Republic, originating from the era of the Warsaw Pact. And considering that about 70% of the equipment of the armed forces of Ukraine comes from there, this is still Soviet-made equipment, which is invaluable.
Within the framework of the Czech initiative, the processes of purchasing and delivering ammunition are being optimized.
The Czech side has supplied the Ukrainian defense forces with both airplanes and helicopters, and accordingly has formed aviation units within the armed forces of its own country. At the present moment, the primary initiative of the Czech Republic is precisely the crucial creation of so-called coalitions, which are primarily and specifically aimed at significantly improving the essential capabilities of Ukraine's defense forces in effectively countering the ongoing Russian aggression.
The historical memory of the Czech people remembers well the disaster that Russia can bring, which is why the Czechs support Ukraine, which is now fighting the aggressor, not allowing the Russians to seize both their own country and Europe.
An incredible turn of history. Kazakhstan has delivered a real knockout to the Kremlin. Moscow could not have imagined such a blow, even in their worst nightmares. Tokayev is showing his character. No more courtesies toward Putin. The Union is bursting at the seams. The empire is crumbling right before our eyes. One by one, Russia's friends are turning away, and Ukraine is gaining a strategic advantage. Is Astana becoming a new center of power, and what is happening with Russian influence? The details of this epic turning point are coming up next in the story.
Ukrainian President Zelensky and Kazakh President Tokayev met in New York for the first time since 2019. On the sidelines of the UN Assembly, Tokayev stated that it is time to sit down at the negotiating table, although he did not directly condemn Russia.
Kazakhstan remains concerned about the crisis around Ukraine, which continues to inflict serious harm on civilians, undermine global trust, and weaken international security. Nevertheless, it is necessary to continue bilateral and international diplomatic efforts to resolve this conflict.
Kazakhstan appears to maintain neutrality on the issue of the Russian-Ukrainian war and offers its mediation services.
Kazakhstan initially offered its services as perhaps a mediator and only as a venue for negotiations between the two opposing sides. That position has not changed.
But as they say, the devil is in the details, and there are many details in Kazakhstan's relations with both Russia and Ukraine. For example, Kazakhstan refused to cooperate with Moscow on building a nuclear power plant. China will build them instead. Also, according to Kazakh authorities, they are preventing Russia from circumventing Western sanctions.
Well, we are taking measures to ensure that our territory is not used to bypass these sanctions. Various comprehensive measures are currently being taken, including the meticulous tracking of goods, extensive online tracking of goods, and even the dedicated creation of a specialized website, where you can conveniently check whether a particular company or a specific product is indeed on the sanctions list at trader.kk. I believe that all our esteemed exporters are fully aware of this crucial information, and accordingly they comply with this.
And President Tokayev stated that they do not recognize the legitimacy of the so-called LNR and DNR.
We do not officially recognize the independent statehood of Taiwan, nor do we acknowledge the sovereignty of Kosovo, South Abkhazia, South Ossetia, or Abkhazia as fully independent nations. And it appears quite clearly, this established principle will be consistently applied to other similar quasi-state territories, which, in our considered view, were indeed the regions of Luhansk and Donetsk, both of which have declared their own independence.
Of course, Russian politicians and propagandists cannot tolerate such audacity and regularly threaten Kazakhstan with war, claiming the same things they said about Ukraine, that these are supposedly originally Russian territories, and
if we don't resolve the issue with Ukraine, then we'll have problems with Kazakhstan, with Armenia, and with other countries that surround us. With
Kazakhstan? Well,
of course.
Why?
Well, just look at what's happening today in Kazakhstan in terms of, so to speak, building a certain Kazakh state, how national mythology about independence is flourishing there, about the switch to the Latin alphabet. And there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. If you really get into it...
The situation in Ukraine is clearly mirrored in Kazakhstan. There too, there are huge regions populated by Russian speakers.
There in Kazakhstan, some people believe that in the future we want, as they say, to seize northern Kazakhstan from them following the Ukrainian scenario. What do you think? Did we actually have such plans, if we're being honest?
I believe that we have historical rights to those lands. These are industrial regions. These are cities that were built by our ancestors. So we gave them away in '91, for no reason at all.
because of this, Kazakhstan created a list of Russian citizens who are banned from entering Ukraine. This list includes about a dozen Russian state deputies, as well as the notorious Tina Kandelaki, the ideologist of the Russian world Dugin, and the late husband of propagandist Simon Yun.
Kazakhs, my dear brothers and sisters, what kind of profound ingratitude is this truly? Please take a very good and careful look at the situation in Ukraine. Think very seriously. If you truly believe you can continue being so incredibly sly and that absolutely nothing will ever happen to you because of it, then you are gravely mistaken.
President Zelensky has repeatedly stated, citing intelligence data, that Russia has military plans for Kazakhstan.
Yes, we have indeed received confirmed information that among their primary priorities are the sovereign Baltic countries, Moldova, and also Kazakhstan. These are the closest targets of the Russian Federation.
The president of Kazakhstan stated that he would put an end to any attempts at separatism, while Kazakh deputies went further and laid claims to territories that are currently part of Russia.
We, as truly responsible citizens, must resolutely stand against any and all manifestations of radicalism, extremism, and separatism. We must be delicate and at the same time firm in our convictions, and ultimately, we must always strive to be fair.
We need to understand that Novosibirsk is not really Novosibirsk, it's Novy Sibir. These are our Kazakh territories. Tyumen is Tyumena. These are the southern lands of the Golden Horde. That is, even beyond Tyumen and further north are also our territories. Orenburg, not Orenburg, but Oremburg. And when it was the capital of the Kazakh state.
There was also a lot of different information from intelligence. For example, that Putin demanded Tokayev supply weapons for the war with Ukraine. And after Ukrainian drone attacks on oil refineries, he begged Kazakhstan for gasoline. At the same time, Putin constantly humiliatingly mixes up Tokayev's patronymic, apparently doing it on purpose.
Everyone knows, of course, that the president of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, has distanced himself from the members of the Collective Security Treaty Organization.
In Putin's plans, which are often characterized by a strategic ambition to restore Russia's geopolitical influence and assert its dominance, there is a clear focus on modernizing military capabilities, expanding economic partnerships, and strengthening political alliances to reshape the international order in a manner favorable to Russian interests and national security.
Putin intended to draw Kazakhstan into the so-called Union State, following the example of Belarus, but he failed. Tokayev only laughs at such proposals. Recently,
the president of the Republic of Belarus, Alexander Volchenko, suggested that Kazakhstan should join the Union State, but I took it as a situational joke. I think there is no need for this, since there are other integration associations, first and foremost, the Eurasian Economic Union. As for nuclear weapons, we don't need them.
even those who seem to be Russia's closest allies understand that it's impossible to trust terrorists and murderers, so it's necessary to keep them at a distance and, if possible, support those who oppose them.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now. Urgent news, straight from the front lines. The enemy is opening up yet another flank. Shocking. Putin's mercenaries rushed in for the kill, but what a blunder. They walked right into fresh traps. This is phenomenal. Our forces crushed the enemy on several fronts at once. Putin believes that no one will ever find out about this. Too late, the countdown has begun. Ukrainian forces have pinned down the Kremlin's mercenaries. Will they finally realize after this defeat that it's time to retreat? We'll find out in just a moment.
The Russians are opening a new direction for their offensive on the front. We're talking about southern Ukraine, specifically the Zaporizhzhia sector. For example, near Stepnohirske, in the area of the settlement of Stepov, the enemy has been conducting active assault operations for the past several days. The occupiers are also trying to send their so-called observers to the Dnipro Islands, which are in the gray zone. Fortunately, all of the enemy's attempts to gain a foothold and deliver ammunition across the river end the same way. For example, the unmanned systems unit of the 15th Operational Brigade, Karadog, has thwarted more than one such attempt. Those few who do manage to cross the river are already awaited on land by Ukrainian drones. Overall, in the southern operational zone, the enemy is striking with guided aerial bombs and unguided rockets. They are constantly increasing the use of kamikaze drones. Additionally, over the past few days, due to worsening weather conditions, the occupiers have increased the number of artillery shellings. In those same areas where the occupiers can reach with drones, all the fields and tree lines are laced with fiber optic cables. This is, for example, what the Pokrovsk direction looks like today. The area around is completely covered with fiber optic cables, each one connected to a deadly FPV drone. But despite everything, our soldiers keep working and are carrying out a real hunt for the occupiers. Our drone operators find the enemy everywhere, in buildings, in tree lines, in shelters, and then give a warm welcome to enemy infantry and equipment. Despite all the efforts of the Russians, our soldiers are managing to achieve success in certain areas of the front. For example, in the Donetsk region, the armed forces of Ukraine have stopped the occupiers' advance in one direction, stabilized the situation, and are eliminating the remaining saboteurs. In particular, the defense forces have stabilized the situation in Yampil in the Donetsk region and are clearing the area of sabotage groups.
Units of the Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and the National Guard are conducting strike and search operations in the settlement itself to detect and eliminate the remaining enemy sabotage groups.
Syrskyi also shared details about the Ukrainian offensive near Dobropilya. There, the armed forces of Ukraine managed to accurately strike several enemy concentration points and partially destroy the occupiers' logistics chain. In some specific areas, Ukrainian drone pilots are creating actual roads of death for the enemy. For example, here our UAVs caught up with 2 Russian Bukanka vans, 6 trucks, and at least 2 armored combat vehicles. The occupiers' losses in this direction over the past day amount to 47 personnel. Of these, 32 are irrecoverable. In total, since the beginning of the counteroffensive operation, the Russians have lost about 3,520 personnel in the direction of Dobropilya. Of these, at least 2,000 will return to their homeland in coffins. However, despite heavy losses on all fronts, Russian generals have no intention of stopping the meat grinder assaults. On the contrary, together with Putin, they seem to be deliberately trying to send as many Russian contract soldiers as possible to their deaths. Thus, the Russians advanced in the Kharkiv region, targeting 8 settlements at once. This is reported by the Ukrainian General Staff. According to the military, over the past day, Ukrainian forces repelled 12 attacks in the southern Slobodyansky direction. And these shots are already from the area near the settlement of Kotlyarivka. As we can see, the Russian helicopter failed to evade the Ukrainian UAV. Drone. And although the incident itself happened earlier, the video of the downing of the enemy bird was published by Russian media only now. On the Lyman axis, while the enemy was carrying out as many as 12 attacks, trying to advance in the areas of the settlements of Karpivka and Rakivka, fighters of the 3rd Army Corps broke through the occupiers' positions and entered the enemy's rear. As a result, the Ukrainian exchange fund was replenished with several new Russian prisoners.
Come out, one at a time! I promise I won't kill you! Come out one at a time! With your hands up! Drop your weapons and come out one at a time! You'll go home in an exchange, you fool! Come out one at a time because you won't get a second chance!
However, not all occupiers are lucky enough to be taken prisoner. For example, in footage captured by our intelligence officers, the moment was recorded when 2 Russian soldiers in the Sumy region surrendered to paratroopers. 13th Odeshebi. Upon learning about the attempt to surrender, the Russians' compatriots in the Russian armed forces decided that Russians do not surrender. And instead of trying to rescue their comrades in service, they simply eliminated their own with a drone. At that moment, our soldier was escorting the prisoners to the evacuation point. Fortunately, unlike the occupiers themselves, he was not harmed as a result of the Russian drone drops.
An urgent and unexpected outburst of emotion from Putin at Valdai. The dictator lost his temper right in front of the cameras, hurling insults and ultimatums. The hall froze in silence as he began to shower the West with accusations. But behind this lies panic. Moscow understands the game is over. The Tomahawks have done their job. Fear. You can sense it in the Kremlin from a distance. The end of the war is getting closer and closer. All the hottest details are still ahead in the report.
Putin once again mustered up his courage and emerged from his bunker. This time, the Russian dictator made an appearance in Sochi at a meeting of the Valdai Discussion Club. There, Vladimir Vladimirovich spent almost 4 hours haranguing Kremlin journalists, praising himself and the situation inside Russia.
I keep repeating this nonsense, this mantra, over and over again.
The bunker dweller started, as usual, with his favorite topic, movement, which, according to the dictator, is so lacking in the modern civilized world.
The world will undoubtedly agree with me. He looks bored when he's monotonous.
At the same time, Putin immediately starts making excuses. Personally, he supposedly isn't starting any unrest in Europe.
They can't possibly believe what they're saying. That Russia is planning to attack NATO, because that's impossible to believe. But they convince their own people. But who are these people? They're either extremely incompetent if they actually believe it because it's impossible to believe such nonsense, or they're simply dishonest.
However, even the nonsense that Putin himself spouts is hard to believe. After all, not even an hour passes after the meeting before the bunker dweller is assuring Europeans not to be afraid of the Kremlin. And now the Russian dictator openly admits that he is launching his drones in EU countries. He blocks the operation of local airports and snoops around NATO military bases in Europe.
Vladimir Vladimirovich, why are you sending so many drones to the West? I won't do it anymore. I won't do it anymore.
I won't do it anymore. Not in France, not in Denmark, not in Copenhagen. Where else is this flying to? At the same time.
At that moment, the sly dictator, with a smile on his face, tries to assure those present of his supposedly exclusively peaceful intentions.
We ourselves have never initiated military confrontation. They are pointless. It's unnecessary and simply absurd. They distract from real problems and challenges. But societies, sooner or later, will still demand answers from their leaders for the fact that their hopes, needs, and demands are being ignored by the elites of their countries.
It seems things are going extremely badly for the bunker dweller if, for the first time since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, he has started talking about responsibility before the people. However, we shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking that Putin has come to his senses or even started to reflect. No, it's just that the situation at the front is forcing the bunker dweller to be more cautious in his statements.
There is such a saying among the people: against a crowbar there is no defense.
And for the Russian army, that crowbar has become the prospect of Ukraine receiving long-range American Tomahawk missiles. Combined with permission to use them against Russian targets, this could seriously worsen the situation for the occupiers. This is something even Putin himself was forced to admit, as he couldn't come up with anything better than simply accepting the transfer of yet another powerful type of weapon to the Ukrainian armed forces.
As for these Tomahawks, they're powerful weapons. It's true that they're not exactly state-of-the-art anymore, but they're still powerful and pose a threat.
But that's not all. As Putin himself admits, fighting in Ukraine is getting harder for him with each passing day. After all, while the Russian army is using donkeys to deliver supplies to the front and sending unprepared and poorly equipped contract soldiers into endless meat grinder assaults, the Ukrainian armed forces have managed to establish uninterrupted delivery of advanced Western weaponry.
They're supplying enough weapons. They supply as much as is needed.
As a result, the situation for Putin on the front lines is so hopeless that soon enough, the bunker dweller himself will be seeking a meeting with Zelensky and initiating negotiations for the quickest possible ceasefire. Putin practically said this in plain language.
And also it is important to note,
Vladimir Vladimirovich didn't forget to cozy up to his new best friend, Donald Trump. Putin has repeatedly sung Trump's praises, especially regarding the war in Ukraine.
But meanwhile, however,
Putin didn't sing any praises to the team of the American president, quite the opposite. From the stage, the Russian dictator began threatening the White House administration. However, the aging Russian dictator hasn't resembled a tiger for a long time now. Putin isn't even able to stand in front of journalists for all 3 hours. Most of the time, he was forced to sit hunched over in his chair, which did not go unnoticed. Just as it's impossible to hide from the public the fact that the Russian dictator's threats are becoming increasingly absurd. If a few years ago the president of the Russian Federation, together with his propagandists, promised to turn the West into radioactive ash, now all the Kremlin is really capable of is causing trouble with its drones in the skies over Europe and musing about reconciliation.
That's all I have on this topic. This was Yadarina Hutsakalo with you, and there will be even more hellish news in our next episode. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.